Our story today is about a large and famous hospital in Japan, and all its visitors come constantly, and this is because they have the best doctors, but what no one knows is that this is a hospital haunted by terrifying demons and a frightening amount of crimes has occurred in it, and this remains what she will tell us, and what she does not want is the property of the one who was one day with the initiative Sama. She is terrified as she tells her that she saw a strange woman in horrifying clothes standing next to her bed and constantly watching her. Of course you cannot determine the features of her face because the stupid woman's hair was long and covered her entire face at the time. I was surprised by her words, especially since she is still new and doesn't know anything. And so Beast Club arrived and spoke to her by interfering. Your room and your doctor watching you? Where exactly did you see her lips? Then I spoke very nervously as she told her. It was she was standing there in the room behind this curtain looking at me with her terrifying bush, and her whole look was a new moon. At that time the queen encouraged the stay movement a little, but she found the place completely empty and no one was there. I thought the state was imagining and did not focus on her words. But the shock is that after a few days, he does not rebel again, complaining about the same problem in the same room as well. She will make you nervous and said, "Did you see her face? Her sick hour?" No, we saw it and it's sufficient, only I saw something else bad and strong. She could not continue her words while she was still out of fear. Every time she thought of the terrifying sight she saw, she meant it, but Malak reassured her and told her, "Tell me quickly, what did you see?" At that time the woman spoke and she trembled and said to her, her head was long, strong, and reached the ceiling like that, and her head is wrapped around her body like a tired or scary animal. Of course, the king was afraid of her words. When I looked at her watch, I found it was 2:30 at night, and she was tired from work all day. Stories. The state took her medicine and let her sleep, and indeed she slept, and she stayed in the room until she saw her afterlife. Oh, by the way, this wing has 6 beds, like a huge wing like this, more than a patient, but since it is a hospital like an animal, there was nothing in it other than the narcissus now. And Wissam walked from this wing. The important thing is that he remained a king. I sat on the sofa reading a novel and forgets about this nonsense for a while, and after 1/4 hour there were 2 people, so I decided to sleep for a while on one of the beds. The empty room, and of course this is against the laws, but she didn't care and went to sleep, but suddenly she felt someone moving. Room, and a frightening whisper in the place. At that time she is scared and looks around, but I found the whole car empty. There is no one else in the room. She is Nargis. Then she spoke with fear and said, "Is there a limit here in it? Is there anyone here who needs me?" Suddenly I heard a strange sound of laughter in the place. At that time no one who listened on the door had his state closed as I had left it. But most likely the sound of laughter was coming from Naga's bed. Then she spoke and said to her, "Narcissus, are you sleepwalking?" At that time the same sound of laughter appeared again, and there was great irony. At that time Malak turned on the searchlight and got up from her place to see who was laughing. The door opened and he came in. The woman who wears red, her hair covers her face, her mouth is wide, and her eyes are scary and terrifying. Her appearance was never the appearance of any human being, and she was laughing in a strange way. At that time she was filled with terror when her phone rang. Her mother then answered and said to her, "What's wrong with it? Were you going to be in the back?" Her mother was nervous and she was telling her, "Are you okay, my daughter? You want something, right?" Then he remained a king. I was more afraid and told her, "Need anything? You rang her at 3 o'clock at night. Are you asking me, are you good or not?" Her watch. The mother spoke lightly and said to her, "I dreamed of a powerful monster. Where are you? Okay, now, please reassure me." "What kind of king?" she asked. "Where will I be? I mean, I'm in the hospital. You don't know if I'm taking it at night, day." Her mother told her, "I dreamed that you were lying on the sword in the hospital, surrounded by 6 corpses, all dressed in red and looking scary." But before she continues her words, the line suddenly cut, and the king is also from this line. The phone fell from her and she looked behind her with great fear, but she did not find anyone behind her. At that time she spoke with great tension and she said, "What do you want, okay? May God protect you, I'm a conqueror far from me." But unfortunately no one responded to her. But suddenly her phone rang again. At that time she was on the ground to pick up her phone. But when I looked next to her, I found a woman standing next to the bed and her legs were the only ones that were visible. Then she quickly got up from her place, breathing heavily. But the strange thing is that she didn't find anyone in the room. Then the girl spoke with fear and said, "No, by God, that will not work. What am I, the one who brought me down from our house, but from me? Forgot." Then to ensure she hadn't gone insane, you can't imagine, I checked under the bed again. I actually found the same 2 men. But Al-Murad's appearance was terrifying. His legs were shaved, blood visible, and they were dirty and covered in rags. She stayed there, watching. She was terrified and cursed the moment she came to work in this haunted hospital. Suddenly Al started moving, and the horrifying sound of his bones along with his frightening laugh filled the space. He stood there too terrified to scream. I was sure the patients were right, there was something strange in this ward. Suddenly I found the goblin control lying on the ground and a great news appeared laughing. Some of the goblins began to move towards her at a frightening speed, laughing with a terrifying voice. At that moment the king of Sakit spoke lightly saying, "Follow me, everyone." And I quickly came to the door of the room, but there were crowns on the floor and another. I heard the sound of monthly laughter and began to crawl on the ground trying to escape it anyway, but suddenly a girl does not play with her face behind a line and her body stretches as if she is tired and it remains open and she scratches it and does not stand. But strangely she didn't move from her place, she preferred to stand and her neck moved until she reached the ceiling. And, before he attacked the terrified king, they fainted from shock. And I left the next day, she was still asleep from shock. And they took her from the hospital, they took her to another hospital. Unfortunately she suffered a nervous shock. When I deleted it I decided to leave the whole job, but after a while she remembered her grandmother's words about the cultural legend. She or her likeness appear at night to enjoy reducing their lives, drinking their blood, killing them and torturing them. So who? Please like and subscribe so it doesn't appear to you at night. Did you notice? Diva, Sandy does not have a father in a new country where she does not know anyone, but she loves her father because he always cares about her, especially since her mother died in an Arab accident, and since she is a Dahago she moved to the best school in the entire city, but the children inside it leave her behind. The important thing is that she did not know that on her first day in Faust she would see what she was most afraid of. After a while, the girl entered the bathroom, but suddenly the door closed on her from the outside, and no matter how much she tried to open it, he would not open it. And what happened was that the tiger also cut off, and suddenly she heard a scary sound around her, like the sound of a monster that was violently executed, and she tried to hide quickly, but she was caught. Despite her, after a while she was enchanted and found herself in the second room surrounded by the principal and the teachers. At that time the principal asked him and told her. The pigeon at that time said to him, suddenly the door was affected by me, and I heard scary sounds, but no one believed it and they ignored him and walked away. And then they came in two girls named Crane. Practically they tell her about a strange and scary person named Charlie, who looks like the Goblin and Wash Boys and has terrifying features, Peggy, who kidnaps girls from school and kills them. That's when you play. That night she told her father everything to transfer her from this school, but the father laughed sarcastically and told her, Charlie mean you idiot, they laugh at you, just like civilizational legends here. And he said you are afraid of her, and of course, he didn't believe her. She grows out of fear. So I went out to the balcony and smelled some air, but I was afraid when I found a scary person moving around her, and his features and clothes were black on black. Suddenly a great man stood up to their house in Onion. At that time I was frightened by his frightening appearance, and it became clear why he had come to see him. This is the same person who shows up at her school. He has a scary, distorted face and does not have clear features, and large humans look at it. At that time she mocked with fear and quickly entered her house. At that time her father came to her asking her why she was screaming, so she told him everything that happened and quickly went out to the balcony and saw Charlie, and of course he didn't find anyone, so he didn't believe her, and when he found her she was so afraid. I sat and sat next to her to reassure her a little. The second day she went to her school and met Emilia and asked her about what happened yesterday, but the strange thing was that the girl was afraid and nervous and was crying while she was looking at you with great fear. Suddenly she spoke in tears as she told her that Karim was completely hidden and had killed her and hidden her body. But she could not continue because of the police car that arrived at the place. She began to interrogate them because they were her friends. And of course when the children talked about Charlie, who had a distorted face, the officers continued to laugh and did not care about their words, hid them and walked away. At that time Sandy was recovering, no one would believe them, so they had to stay in school Detani, but do it, she refused and decided to take revenge on its owner and on Charles herself. At that time I was a little afraid, but I decided to help Emilia, and they took the wheel and moved from the school without anyone noticing them. After a while they arrived in the tunnel hungry, and oh my goodness, I knew that those who live here would spread. After that they kept sabotaging the calf and repeatedly entered the soul to meet Karen, and indeed my dear, they entered the tunnel and kept walking for a while until they heard a great honor and a girl getting dirty and saying to him, Fadli, walk from here Sydney, Howni is forbidden for you. At that time the two dragons were very afraid of what was Masud Karim, so they said quickly go through the tunnel, and they stood in their place fearing that they would not knock. Of course they didn't want to divide, so they entered the nurse on the right, and after a while they arrived at a closed door. At that time Sandy started looking for something to break the door, but suddenly a ministry opened from him, Charlie, and the first time I saw his face I continued to act and was not very afraid but paralyzed, became fanatical and began to suffocate Emilia with all her strength. At that time Sandy looked around her quickly and found a stick that crossed her thigh. She hit him with it on his head with all force until he fainted. The dragons moved quickly to save their companions and called the police to enter the tunnel, and indeed the police. They entered the tunnel quickly, but the strange thing is that they came back again. Fayus did not find anyone inside, but of course since they found Karen in a place like this, they believed that Atra's story was true, and they were afraid that it would be better for him to come back and take revenge on them, which is why the police asked them to stay in their home for a few days and never go out until they met Charlie. Of course the girls described his appearance, and the police took a picture and posted it everywhere. After a while Sandy returned to her room, and before she slept she heard the balcony opening up in the eloquent Bravo Shaft Chumli, which meant a deformed bush who had no features at all, no flower eyes or nostrils among just a person. What is he talking about? He moved towards her with frightening anger. I will definitely kill you, or maybe not. I'll leave you. At that time she was stripped of her place, acting terrified and calling for her father, but Charlie grabbed her by the drum and gathered her on the bed. At that time the one who smiles likely tells him, "Right, Papa, come to me quickly." The father rushed in, hit him on the head and called the police. Finally Friday arrested him and finally accompanied his arrest, and the city got rid of the myth of the deranged Charles. I couldn't move from my place while I was hiding under my blanket. I couldn't even open my eyes and see what was happening. The weather was calm as usual, there was no sound around me, but I knew and was sure that something would happen a little more, so I got up from my place and went down the stairs slowly again, trying not to make any sound. Indeed, after a while I went down and finally stood up heading for the door, and I was very excited, so I caught Santa Claus and put the gifts under the tree. At that time I sat under the table and I was very happy and waiting to put my gift, but suddenly I heard the sound of movement at the tree. At that time, from a position quickly I was speaking happily and saying, "Finally I got you, lovey." It is clear that the poor boy saw his intentions. There was a terrifying monster standing in his house. It wasn't Santa Claus, no, it was Dad, but Dad, the goblin's whole body was huge and all black. Why did he come out? Agent is pointed and strange. Dale is tall, his eyes are white, and suddenly he screams at the child as he laughs with the drink and says to him, "How are you, my love?" A memory of those moments. If not for the fish, he wouldn't have been swift. I was his feline companion hiding under the quilt, fearing the lurking monster. After a while fresh meat emerged, but he was still scared. Finding nothing in the room, he descended again, standing behind the guard surveying the area. He felt a mix of comfort and fear when nobody was around, and he shared his thoughts. "Maybe you were?" I envision as typical, another day spent with Ahmed, embracing him warmly, with smiles and forgetfulness of past events. The origin of this enthusiasm was his birthday celebration. Later we saw him at home joyfully unwrapping multiple presents, including a Zabiner game. Days passed as he constantly carried the Zabiner, ignoring concerned looks from his family, conversing with friends about his peculiar dream. His friends shocked the stranger when they discovered him in his house. "Are you certain it's a dream? Haven't you heard of the cabbage legend? The terrifying entity who despises Santa Claus and always attempts to tarnish his reputation." Muhammad became anxious due to those words, feeling watched. Yet upon looking around he saw no one. His fear grew, recalling the strange sighting. The weather suddenly changed, bringing snow and fierce wind obscuring visibility. They barely glimpsed a gas station and hurried there. Despite the proximity, Muhammad and his companion couldn't spot each other in the chaotic weather. Alone was terrified, and he was circling around his friend until he failed and he entered the station alone. He had a piece of paper saying that the employee would be late for an hour. At that time, if he decided, he would enjoy himself and eat some snacks and talk about his enjoyment, and he would say, "Oh, this is what I'm going to eat for free," but he took me some sweets. In my pocket, he actually began to fill his pocket until it suddenly became high and he heard the sound of someone's footsteps around him. When he looked quickly at the Krampus, who was speaking sarcastically, he said to him, "It's a shame, boy, that you remain absent and thieves like this." Back then, if he took up a new program and started running swiftly, the imp was trailing behind the two of them. Difficulty because of the snow and wind, till the well-being spoke strongly and said to him, "You won't know how to run away from me, I will kill you today." At that time the boy continued to cry while she was on the ground in fear, and Alafid is close to him. Suddenly he hears an Arabic voice, "Police," then he hurried and rebuked them, saying to them, "Follow me, no. Her story is eating me cabbage here. I saw its narrow shape when the food from the surrounding began to catch up with me. Ha ha ha." Then the officer spoke sarcastically. He told him, "Exactly, the beast is upset with you, thief. The taste came out of the place. By the way, the place was full of cameras. And we saw you, and you steal." After some time, they spotted him in the cell, awaiting his fate. Suddenly, her name became synonymous with the evil man's chuckle, and when he shut the window to confine him, he trudged through the snow until he reached him, laughing maniacally and taunting him. "I will see you next year, Muhammad, but you have to be smart like this so that I don't get upset with you again." Suddenly he disappears, and Muhammad is terrified of him and his doers. After a while the officer went out to his family, whom they had paid for the things he had stolen, and they preferred to mock him nervously. But the boy was terrified of the terrifying civilizational myth that would destroy his entire life. That's it, my friend. If you get here with us, like and subscribe so that you can receive everything new from us.